Hey everybody, it's Jerry from the Military Collectible Shop. Welcome to another edition of Military Collecting 101. So today's topic is going to be the World War II wings from the Army Air Corps and Army Air Forces. So one of the things that I actually collect, and I don't consider myself an active collector of them, but I do collect them, I like them, I appreciate them, and there's still a lot of mystery that sort of surrounds them. So I think for newer collectors, this is a great way to get into the hobby, and there's a lot of neat pieces once you kind of know a few basic rules about them. And so I thought this would be a good topic for the 101 series. Now again, this is geared toward newer collectors. I don't want to say younger collectors anymore, because there's a lot of older collectors who are getting into the hobby or getting back in. You know, they used to collect German stuff, and now they're kind of dipping their toes into the American stuff. So that's great. So newer collectors of any age. And so I'm hoping that you find this series helpful. For you advanced collectors, there's probably going to be some stuff that I say that's not exactly right. Yeah, well, that happens. No one can stand in front of a classroom day after day and say more than they actually know. But that's the way it is. So feel free to send your corrections. Call our special corrections line at 1-800. No, but you can always email me. I try to put good information out there. This is stuff that I actually believe to be true. Again, get information from multiple sources. We always encourage that, and do some critical thinking on your own. But I'm going to share with you today what I know. So let's get to some wings. So I had just purchased a relatively large collection of U.S. militaria, and in there were a bunch of wings. They're actually over here, just out of frame. This is my own personal wing collection, and so I thought I would share with you some of the things that I like about collecting wings, some of the things that I know about collecting wings, some of the things you could look for in collecting wings, and some of the things you should consider while collecting wings. That's a lot of wing talk. All right. So one of the things I really like about collecting wings is that they're almost designed to be collected, because not only do you have different types of wings for the different positions in the Air Forces, Army Air Forces, but you also have ones from different makers, and ones from different time periods, and ultimately different qualification ones. So wings were very highly thought of and sought after, but they first came out in 1913, I believe, was the first pair of wings that was ever issued to an early American aviator. The Wright brothers did their thing in 1902, I think. And soon after, as soon as we could militarize the planes, we certainly did. But it was still kind of the new frontier. Flying a plane was a very gutsy thing to do back when they were made out of canvas and wood. So the guys were kind of thought of a little bit as daredevils, so that was interesting to see. So then in World War I, we start to see some of the wings become more prolific. Now, in my own collection, I actually only have one World War I set of wings. It's a bullion set, meaning that it was hand done in bullion thread with a pin back. Most of the ones you see are done in metal. Now, I want to caution you, because the majority of World War I wings that you see are going to be reproductions. There's just a ton of reproductions out there. So I'm not necessarily even going to touch on the World War I wing. Wow, that's a lot of W's. I'm not even going to touch on that topic. I'm gonna pretty much stick to World War II. kind of my main area of interest. And while wings are still in use to this day, they've changed over time, and but let's take a look at some of the wings that you might encounter. So the first basic pattern of wing that you might see is going to be the pilot. So the pilot has the shield with the two wings coming off it. Now, wings generally came in 3 different sizes. You had the 3-inch size for the uniform. There was a 2-inch size, a little smaller, for the shirt. And then there was actually like an unofficial 1-inch and something that was sometimes worn on the hat, sometimes as a sweetheart piece, sometimes you'll actually see it worn on the collar. Don't believe that was actually ever an official thing, but you do see them. Now, the other thing that helps us date them is that the nice thing about World War II wings is that during World War II, sterling silver was not a strategic metal. So what that means is that there was a lot of it around that they didn't necessarily need for the war effort, even though even back then it was still a more valued metal, but it was something that was actually accessible. So a lot of the World War II wings that you see will actually be marked sterling for sterling silver, or some variation thereof. And then on the early World War II wings, we see what's called the long pinback, okay, by collectors. Conversely, what we'll see later on as the war progressed, I gotta have a pair in here somewhere. Okay, well here, no. A lot of pinbacks. That's nice. Okay. As the war progressed, we get into something called the clutchback, or those of you who are in the service know these as dammits. But the clutchback, or postback, were used later on in World War II. We tend to think of these coming out around later 1944. Although some companies continued to make the pinback versions all the way through the war and even later. But generally, if you find a wing that's in the World War II pattern, marked sterling silver, and has a long pinback, that's definitely going to be a World War II wing. If you find a clutchback one, and it's sterling marked, that's also going to be considered a World War II wing a little later. But then what you'll find is even later, kind of going into the 50s, after the war, they stopped making things out of sterling silver. You're going to see the clutchback ones being used, but no longer are the wings actually going to be sterling silver. So they'll omit that sterling silver mark. Okay, so again, the things you want to look for, you know, the pattern of the wing. Does it have the long pinback? Is it sterling marked? Okay, those are your first couple things to look for when you're looking for a wing. Now, that all being said, wings are one of those collectibles where there's a lot of variations. There were things that were made overseas, there in other countries, occupied countries, wings that were made in like Britain, India, Mexico. You're going to see a wide variety over in the China, Burma, India theater. You're going to see a whole wide variety of materials used for wings. And there's actually even some that were cast out of lead that were done by POWs in German prison camps. So, and that's one of the other things that makes them fun to collect, because there's so many variations. But as a newer collector, what I would recommend is sticking to the basics. You know, if you want World War II wing, go with the sterling silver long pinback. And then you can kind of branch out, or you might just happen to luck into some other of the unusual variants. Okay, so then we can talk about the types of wings, because we mentioned the pilot with the shield. But starting at kind of the other end of the commonality spectrum, we've got the World War II air crew wing. So just based on sheer numbers, these are going to be the kind of wings that you might find if you're going out and about looking for militaria. You're probably going to encounter an air crew wing, and that's based on the numbers of guys who were serving as air crew. So these were guys who were generally enlisted men who served in some capacity on board the airplane. They weren't ground crew. Ground crew didn't have a wing, but they were actually flight qualified air crew. So, and again, you'll find these with the long pinback and Sterling marked, but like a B-17 bomber had a crew of 10. So there would be the pilot, the co-pilot, so they would get the pilot wings, the bombardier, which would get a bombardier wing, I'll talk about that more in a sec, possibly a navigator, which would get a navigator's wing, and then the rest of the guys early on would get air crew members' wings, and then they came up with the air gunner wings. So just based on numbers, you're going to find an air crewman's wing, probably the most common. Then after that, you're going to find a gunner's wing, because again, you've got your tail gunner, your top turret gunner, your ball turret gunner, your left side gunner, your right side gunner. So that's why you find a lot of those wings, and why some other wings, like the Navigator or even the Bombardier, are a lot harder to find. Okay, so going through the different types of wings, and I'm going to pull some of these out. So these are part of the collection that I had just acquired. So we've got a nice pilot wing with the clutchbacks, another pilot wing, another pilot wing, Sterling marked. All right, this one's kind of nice. This is an observer wing. So the observers would fly with air crews for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes they might be taking map readings or doing something, watching troop formations, a variety of tasks. But the observer wing is a little bit harder to find in the wing spectrum. All right, again, some more pilots, clutchback, another clutchback pilot, pinback air crew, a 2-inch pilot, again for the shirt. All right. But yeah, this is a nice collection with a bunch of wings. A service pilot. This one has an S on it. Actually, let me try to go through the types of wings and see if this makes sense. Okay, so we have the pilot with the wings and the shield. We got that one down. That's easy, because there will be a test later. Okay, then I have. These are nice. These are actually for the flight surgeon. So there could be a doctor. Is there a doctor on board? Yes, and if there was, he would wear the flight surgeon wings. These are actually fairly rare wings, and prior to, I believe, 1943, they made them in gold-colored metal, which is unusual for the Army Air Forces. And then after that, they made them in the regular silver. But nice looking wings. Then we have the Bombardier, and what's nice about the Bombardier is it's got a little bomb on it. So again, these are fairly rare because there wasn't, theoretically on the plane, there was only one Bombardier. Now, some plane positions held two, some plane had two positions, depending on the plane. So they might not have an actual Bombardier on the plane. The gunner wings that I mentioned. You do see a lot of the gunner wings, and a lot of times people will try to sell these as Bombardier wings because they think it looks like a bomb. Actually, the gunner wing is a bullet, and the way you can tell the difference is the bullet has a flat end Well, the bomb is pointed on both ends, okay, with fins. So people think that this is a bomb. I can't tell you the number of times where people have called up, I've got a bombardier wing, and you get excited because they're rarer, and then it's a gunner wing, which is still nice, just not a bombardier wing. All right, then we've got the air crewman's wing with the eagle in it. The observer wing that I spoke of. The S-wing for the service pilot. So service pilots were able to fly planes, but they weren't qualified to fly like a bomber. It had something to do with what the types of planes they could fly and how far they could fly and the type of missions they could fly. There were also liaison pilots with the L. And those guys, I believe, flew smaller planes, the liaison pilots. And then the ever popular glider pilot. So these would have been the guys who were actually flying the gliders with the G. And then we have the navigator wings with its navigational instrument thing in there. And then here's a flight engineer. These came out kind of late, and I believe were mainly used on the B-29 bombers. But a neat wing with a propellered engine. Now there are a couple that I don't have in my collection. There's a technical observer, which is a rarer wing to find, where it has a T superimposed over the O, like the observer wing. Here's another liaison, gunner, crew. Okay, this one would actually be a balloon pilot. Now, I don't know if I believe this one or not. I'll talk about reproductions in a minute, because like anything else, anything that's good has been reproduced. It's just one of the things about the hobby that you have to accept and deal with, and every one of us at some point buys a reproduction, knowingly, unknowingly. It's going to happen. People who say they've never been burned by a reproduction, they're either lying to you or they're lying to themselves. Because you can be as careful as you want, and somehow things still end up. So we'll talk about reproductions. But this, the balloonist badge would actually be a fairly rare badge wing, if it's actually real. So I am not holding my breath on that one. All right. Okay, so those are kind of the basic types of wings. Then, as collectors, because this is what we do, we love to collect things, we love to look for the differences in things. I mean, even just here, you can kind of see the differences just in the front designs. But they're made by different makers. So there's a lot of different manufacturers who produced wings. Jewelers, small cottage industry people, and Tiffany, Bailey Banks and Biddle, they produced wings. A lot of different companies, Beverly Craft. But what's great, and all the standard Army insignia makers also produced wings. So like the Gemsco, Amico. I'm trying to think of somebody. I should have looked at some of these. But a lot of times you'll actually see the maker logo on the backs. Now, in some cases you won't, because they had what was called a graduation wing. And that was sort of an unofficial term, but these were... That's probably the snowman calling right now. We'll let him go to voicemail. Okay, so the graduation wings, when the guy went through like flight gunnery school and was awarded his first set of wings, because the government didn't want to sort of play favorites as to who they were ordering the wings from, they didn't have the manufacturers put their logo on those wings for that contract that they had ordered. So they would just get a wing that's stamped Sterling. But as a collector, you'll start to notice some of the patterns. And it's kind of funny because some of the patterns are very derivative of some of the other patterns. So you'll notice like, oh, this company kind of took this design, and yet some of them are very different. You know, like some wings are more rounded, some are more pointy. Some of the wings have a lot more of what we call feathering to them, where it's a finer level of detail that's put into the wing. So those are always more sought after by collectors. Some of the foreign-made ones, like this one was probably made over in India, aircrew member. It's actually like a British-style pin on this one. So as a collector, there's such a variety of different types of wings. And then you get to kind of the bizarro ones. Like this is a set that was made in lucite with a little pin. Now it could have been just a sweetheart piece, you know, for someone, you know, somebody's girlfriend or mom or something. Or it could have been one that was made in plastic or lucite, and maybe it was painted, and the paint had just flecked off over the years. So maybe the guy was somewhere stationed, he couldn't find a set of wings, had these made up somewhere, and you know, was able to wear those for what he needed. So there's really a nice variety of wing types and designs and patterns and makers. You know, so as a collector, well, of course we want to try to get one of each. Not always possible, and some are much rarer than others. And again, one of the things you have to worry about is reproductions. And so a lot of anytime I see a rarer pattern wing, be it like a World War I one, or like a rarer World War II one, like a balloon pilot, or there was actually like a dirigible one where it has like a blimp on it. You know, you have to worry a little bit. Now, there's also a problem in that there's a company that was a prolific wing maker and insignia maker during World War II called NS Meyer. They're out of New York. They made a bunch of great military insignia, which is great. The problem is, in the 1980s, they went out of business, and their dies got sold to somebody, and they started restriking wings. So there are a couple different tells that will let you discern a World War II Meyer wing from a post-World War II Meyer wing. And I don't want to give away all of the secrets, but I will show you one of the things that we look for in a Meyer wing is how the pin on the back actually opens. On a World War II one, the pin is going to get, you know, is only going to open to about 45 degrees. On a reproduction one, the pin will flop all the way over because they use a different style pin. Even though the fronts are going to look exactly the same, and even though, you know, when these first came out, these were super shiny. I remember the 80s. You know, these were, you know, they used sterling silver. They made them out of silver, but they hadn't tarnished. But now, given the years and everything, now you'll find them tarnished. So, but the pin is a giveaway, as is the edging and just kind of the general clarity of the strikes. So that's one way to tell. Now, unfortunately, what that's done for all of the Meyer wings is sort of decreased the value of them. They're just not as sought after as some other makers because they're one of the ones that's more heavily reproduced. Now, people have also been producing other wings or putting spurious markings on other wings or modifying wings. You know, sometimes you'll find someone that it had the clutch posts and they ground those off and they put on a pin to make it appear like an earlier one. So, just like any other aspect of military collecting, you have to be aware, know who you're dealing with. That's the big thing. Now, you can't always do that. You know, at a flea market, you know, or at an auction, you don't know. Sometimes or at an estate sale, you just have to take your shot. But generally look at everything with a critical eye. As they like to say, the devil's in the details. So look at the pin. Is it how it should be? Does it look like it's 80 some years old? How's the casting? How's the strike? They just didn't spend a lot of time when they're making the reproductions. So there'll be some waviness, there'll be some ripples, there'll be, the edges almost look like they were almost like fake wear. But actually I think it's just a problem with the casting process, that they just don't have the same sharp details that you'll see in an original World War II one. So that's definitely something to consider. You can also familiarize yourself with known maker marks. There are some good books out on wings. There's one called Silver Wings, Pinks and Greens that actually covers a lot of the Army Air Force stuff, volumes 1 and 2. Those are great books if you have interest in wings and Army Air Force things. Talks about the clothing, those kind of things. There are some other wing books out there, and there's some great websites. I'm a member of the U.S. Military Forum, and on there, it's an online forum, a lot of information about particular wings and their maker markings. So what you do is you compare, your wing, the type of wing, with the type of marking. Does it have the sterling in the center, or is it off to one side? Does it have the manufacturer's name? Is the abbreviation correct? Is the pin, does that make sense for the time period that it should be in? So that's a little bit of research, but collecting wings can actually be a very rewarding hobby. And, because there's a wide variety, they're still readily inexpensive compared to a lot of militaria. You can still find a lot of them and build up a decent collection. They're all kind of historically interesting. When you start thinking about, the miles that these wings have put on, and, the brave men and women who wore them. I know a lot of people who make little dioramas out of them, get some Army Air Force patches, put some wings in there. It's a great collection. It doesn't take up a lot of room. You got the silver value, which unfortunately, I hate this. I hate when the value of silver and gold goes up, because sadly, a lot of wings get melted down. So here's a hint, sometimes check out the local jewelry shops. Look in the silver bin. A lot of jewelers don't care about the historical aspect of the wings. They just see the silver. So, it's part of what we do to kind of protect and preserve and keep these artifacts of history for the next generations, so that they'll be out there, the information will still be out there, people will still collect, and people will still remember, the people who wore these things, 75, 80 years ago, to protect our freedoms. So, if wings are something you're interested in, you want to talk wings, feel free to shoot me an email sometime. Love to hear from you. Love seeing your collections. Thanks to those of you who've shared, some of your collections with us. We're collectors at heart, first and foremost. So we love talking about this, and we appreciate you hanging around. So I hope you've learned something. All right, here's the test. So there's 3 things you want to look for in a World War II pilot wing. What is it? Go. All right, good. You got them all. Great. I'm glad you were listening. Okay. If you're interested in any other topics, you want us to cover something else, let us know. We're always interested to hear what you're interested in, so we can try to share our knowledge with you. And if we don't know, we can even bring in some guest speakers. So that could be fun sometime too. But thanks for joining me. I hope you learned a little something about U.S. wings. And if not, well, I'll be doing more of these. So, all right. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm Jerry from the Military Collectible Shop. Class dismissed.